And here's John, your other community member, just in time.
Good.
All right, so hello everybody. Welcome to Ecovillage Talks, episode 7. And today we're here with Narara Ecovillage, and that's Lyndall, give us a wave, and Marg. And of course, we're here with at Gaia Ashram in Thailand. Good morning, everyone. So before we start off with our topic today, which is intergenerational living in eco-villages, let's hear a little bit about Narara. Who are you? Where are you? And how are you today?
You want to start or go for it? Okay. Well, hello, everybody. It's so nice to be with you. Thanks for having us. We're just about an hour north of Sydney, Australia, and it's very easy for you to come and visit us, and we'll welcome you very warmly. All you have to do is get off a plane in Sydney and walk a few steps over to a railway station and jump on a train, swap once, and then you'll be up with us in about an hour and a half or something. And we'll pick you up at the airport, bring you home, give you a nice meal, and make sure that you're well slept, and you'd be so welcome. So any of you that come, you'd be so welcome. And you can contact us through the website, nararaecovillage.com. And we'd love to see you and show you our place here and hear about your place, wherever you are in the world. Narara Ecovillage is an intentional community. We balance 3 legs of a stool. We're looking at the ecological and the social and the economics of the place, and that's the 3 are very important to us. We're a community of about 230 now, I believe, and 60 of those are children. And not all of those numbers are living on site at the moment. There are about 110 adults living on site and about 30 children living on site. And the rest have bought some property, a lot, in stage 2, which is our second and final stage. And they are in various stages of building a home here. So the numbers won't be up to 200 and something until a couple of years away, and so we're welcoming people slowly, but surely, as the houses are built and people move in. So that's the broad brush. I suppose the other thing that's very important, especially as it's a part of the topic of today, is that we're very much an intergenerational eco-village. We have, as I said, 60 children under the age of about 18. Funnily enough, virtually nobody in their 20s, which kind of makes sense. I didn't have any children interested really in the project when they were in their 20s, but when they entered their 30s, things changed. And then we have plenty of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and I think it's now 3 that are in their early 80s. So that's the age demographic. And people from a lot of different heritages, which is nice as well. So we're not a sect, we're very secular, and people come to us mainly because they want to live in an intentional community, and they want to know their neighbours, and they want to live a little bit more gently on the land. But we're not really fanatical in any area of our living. So is that enough background for now?
Yeah, unless you have any questions, then feel free to hop in and respond as well. But yeah, that gives us a good ground, and thank you so much. And can you give us a brief introduction in case anyone doesn't know who you are? Oh, you're muted.
Hi everyone, my name is Sunisa from Gaia Ashram. It's a small eco-village project starting now for only 12 years, based in the northeast of Thailand, just near Thai-Lao borders. And yeah, today I'm really looking forward to hear from the experience of our more mature community, especially on these topics of successions. I'm already we are also on this similar process, still young for that process, but I mean, start to prepare ourselves more for the future if the community expand. So yeah, let's learn more and hear more from our guest today.
Mhm. So let's start off with, can you tell us a little bit about how Narara is organized socially and how you made the decisions on how to organize socially with this in mind, with kind of sharing and being a community?
Okay, so I might just jump back one step, because what I didn't say is this darling woman on my right is my eldest daughter, is my eldest child, and my only daughter, favorite daughter. And I thought I lost her some years ago to love in the United States, when she didn't come home from a holiday once and then actually married this American and then started having children in this other country. And so I thought she might be lost forever. But she rang one day and said, we've decided that we want to bring the children up in Australia and we're coming back to Australia. And I said, oh, that's fabulous. Where are you going to live? And she said, oh, in the Ecovillage. And so here she is. So that's a really lovely thing. So this is Marg.
The lengths some mothers will go to create an incentive for
I'd do
somebody to come
anything,
home.
anything to get her back here, you know. And so, and also our youngest, Dave, and my youngest child is also living here. So that's Sam. He's has a wife and one child, one 7-year-old girl. So 2 out of 3 of our children are here. So that's just in the background, you know. Getting on to how we organize ourselves, very early in the piece, an email dropped into my inbox in about 2004 or 2006, I can't remember what, talking about a woman that was coming from the United States to actually to present a course called Sociocracy. And so I was really drawn to jump on a plane to the other side of the country, thinking that it sounded much more interesting than 52 people want something, 48 don't want it. And so then there's all the, negotiations. And I'd also heard of consensus too, and that didn't seem like the way to go either. And so this sounded like a halfway house. So sociocracy is a full form of governance. So it not only informs us how to make decisions, but it tells us how to structure us, or it assists us in our structuring of ourselves, how we actually run meetings. There are procedures and processes for that. And then, of course, how we prepare proposals, and then how we make decisions. And it's called decision making by consent. So that's the guts of it. And you know, if ever you want, I'm more than happy to present a taste of sociocracy, which is what I'm no trained consultant in sociocracy, but I do present something called a taste of sociocracy, just to give people a taste of it here, so that they know kind of what they're coming from. But it is a very inclusive, transparent form of governance. And I'm very proud that it's here. We sometimes stumble in its execution, like a lot, but each of those becomes a learning experience. And we sort of dust ourselves down when we don't do so well. And then we look at and I've been at a meeting this morning, looking at what we can do better for a particular, area of our inquiry, with about 20 people in the room. And so the power of that is quite incredible, that we all have to work on how we are going to get together and take ourselves forward. So that's kind of the guts of the way we organize ourselves here.
Thank you. And moving into a little bit about how you have created so everyone has a say in the decision making, or depending on what things they're interested in and involved in. So how does that work when you're the founder? Because we know lots of companies and organizations and eco-villages often have a founder or founding set of people, and when they come to step back or step down or step out or whatever the right word is, it often is a tricky time for the community or the organization. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think it stems right back to the beginning, when I was very interested in starting an eco-village, and thought that Dave and my husband and I, would actually buy the land. And then the luckiest thing happened. and that was that we lost all our money. We invested with a fellow who actually did fraud, ended up in jail. He was a great friend of ours, did fraud, and we lost a lot of money. So then it was like, what do we do now? We haven't got any money to buy the land. And it was actually a blessing. I can say that sort of looking back 15, 20 years now, because it meant that if we were going to go ahead with an eco-village, it had to be done through people, because now we didn't have the money to look into buying the land. And I think that that was a real blessing, because then there was, although somebody was the founder, somebody had to sort of kick off the idea, but then everything else from that spark on had to be with other people in mind. And so other people to help raise the finance for even buying the land, so we needed a lawyer, and we needed engineers, and we needed, people with some money to be able to open their wallet to actually buy this land, especially for the way we were developing. We also have land, as I was saying, just about an hour from Sydney. Sydney is a very expensive place to buy real estate. And really, we're a suburb of Sydney. So we've had to sort of work with that, with that most of the things associated with it have been kind of, places where we've had to sort of dig deep for finances as well, So I think that's a key thing. I'm not in charge, I'm not the key financial holder of this place. I don't own any more than anybody else owns. It's not to say people are still very respectful of my position, and usually they will ask my opinion. I'm very lucky that way, but I have equal time to talk about something, and that's the meeting that we ran this morning. One of the things in sociocracy is that we sit, if you can imagine, mostly in a circle. And when we're giving our different opinions and thoughts on things, we move through in what's called no response rounds. So I don't have any more time exposure, supposedly. I mean, sometimes I shoot my mouth off more than others do. But if the facilitator is running it tightly, I won't be given any more airspace than anybody else. So I think that that's very encouraging for succession planning, that there are a lot of other people stepping up in a lot of areas. And I'm not even on the board anymore, which is our sort of one of our, it's lovely. I can work from a different part now. So I hope that helps, giving a little bit of a background on where we are. And it's, it's hats off to sociocracy, really.
And I want to throw this back to you. You know a lot of communities, and you have seen a lot of, I guess, phases of leadership. So what do you want to share about this? You're muted.
Yeah, actually, I even want to ask further questions for our host because I'm very curious about how do people start to get involved in decision-making process because from our experience is that when with the founders and with the pioneering that's starting the project up, and the level of experience and involvement and investment may be quite intense. And then when people start to get involved, how did that making process of involvement of people, how do you start to include people in that decision-making process, in which level of it that I'm very curious of, because this is also I'm observing from our own project and also from other projects. This is part of quite a tricky part. So would you share more about that?
I guess, again, it's part of the link to sociocracy. Again, I suppose it's in our structure to a certain extent. And so we have different circles or teams, as you might like to call them, with different interest groups. So there's the development area, there's the land area, there's the community area, there's the economics, the business area. And so often people, for example, Tanya, who's on our call, she's very interested in Gaia and Jen and communications and things. And John, who's on our call there, he ranges over a number of areas. He's on the board for example, for one thing, but also he's chair of our board, actually, but he's actually involved in the utilities like the water and the power. And so people move to their areas. My husband's very interested. He's worked in renewable energy all his life. So he's on the power team, you know, and the water team and that. Marg sort of helps a lot with our website and does a lot of that. So because that's part of her skill. So it might be people are following to a large extent their interest or their skill level. And so we've got horticulturalists and permaculturalists. So they're all very much loving the land team, you know. We've got accountants and business people, and some of them are on the business team. So often it's that way, because most of us are actually, well, we're struggling with what to call us, actually. We sort of say we're volunteers, but how do you volunteer when you're in your own home? You know, this place is our own home. But most of us are working for the love of it. And there are people like Marg who are still, you know, I'm not working anymore, you know, so I've got plenty of time to sort of devote to the project and to my areas of expertise and interest. But Marg is still working and, you know, bringing up two boys with her husband. And so she's, you know, got less time to put into things. So that's pretty much how, and then so there are some paid people, you know, we have a development manager, we have an admin officer, we have a financial controller. So those people actually are paid, but the rest kind of follow their nose to a certain extent. If they're very interested in community, then that's where they'll hang out, you know, and they'll be organizing things and welcoming people and working on the sales and marketing and the orientation of new members and the welcoming of new members.
Yeah, I like to explore a little further on this topic. It's very interesting. I have two aspects of this. One is that how did people could start getting involved in the decision making? For example, if they just newly joined the communities, what is the process to start including them? Can they start being part of the decision making circle straight away, or is there certain steps to that? That is one of my questions.
There's not really a time thing, you know. So there's a fellow who's actually on the board, and he's only been with us for probably 12 months or so, you know. So he went to a position on the board pretty quickly, and that's happened from time to time. People, they do a process in joining us, you know, a membership process. And part of the membership process is actually writing out a reflective questionnaire, you know, answers to questions. What are you interested in? You know, what are your deal breakers that you're not going to come here if we do this? And what things can you contribute to this project? And most people know that part of our aim is to be a demonstration eco-village. So we want to be able to show different aspects of what we're doing here. So we often have people doing PhDs studying the social aspects of how we're getting on together, you know, or the environmental aspects. And I guess we'll have some in the business aspects. And maybe this is where you'll be able to help us now, you know, develop after you've done this course, you'll be able to come and give us some tips on what you've learned over there in Vienna, perhaps, for our business area. So people, yes, they just come and we see what's on their questionnaire and we say, oh my goodness, you've got skills in database management. You know, would you be interested in just guiding us here or helping us here? Or else they might say that they have an interest in something rather than a skill in something. And so they might jump onto the land team because they love to learn and want to do some gardening so much. But there's no time because you know, and even the fellow who was on the board was in this meeting that we talked about this morning, which was to sort of review a few practices that we've had. And he was saying how he was learning so much today, you know. So even though he's on the board, we none of us ever stop learning and listening to our fellow intentional community, you know, neighbors. And it's a constant learning process. And most of us agree that since we've been here, they talk about community knocking the edges off us, and which I think is just another way of saying, there's a learning process in learning to live with communities, because that is not the Australian way here. Most of us have been brought up in the nuclear family.
Mm.
I wonder if, Mark, can you maybe speak? I guess you've been through this or you're going through this process kind of recently. So can you tell us how it is from your side?
Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting. So I've been part of the communities. I moved back in at the end of 2016. And so I've really been, and we immediately put an intention out to the world of wanting to live close by to the eco village. This was before any houses were built. And something was looking down on us and blessing us, because the house next door to the eco village became available, and we were able to move in right next door before any houses were on site, or any new houses were built. There were 2 houses on site at the time. And so I feel like while we weren't involved in the pre-work, we sort of came right at the beginning of the development of the site and the community on site here. And what I observed in myself and in a lot of other new members is this sort of idea of utopia. You come and all of this hope and potential is in front of you, and you want to make it, the best that you can, and you throw yourself in with all your heart and all your passion. And one of the things that I observe is that, living together with different people and different points of view, it's very easy to get your heart hurt when you're putting yourself, throwing so much of yourself into it. And then there comes this process of realizing that, because we haven't had this experience of needing to take into consideration so many different people's point of view, it really is kind of a profound, magical process. But I don't think many people come in without getting a little bit, I like the way Mum said it, your edges knocked off a little bit, but that hurts a little bit at the time when you're in it and you're throwing yourself into it. So I think that that watching that process, observing that process in myself, and then watching other new members go through it, and understanding that this is a sort of a new old way of living, right? To live together. It's actually a beautiful process. And I must say, I wasn't passionate about sociocracy right from the start, but I feel the longer I go forward, the more I realize the genius of it, and that, nothing is utopia. And so it seems to me that it's a model that really is it's the best way to balance forward progress with ensuring that, voices are heard. So I think I kind of lost your question in the middle there, but hopefully that.
No, it's so lovely to hear from your point of view, because although this project is quite a well-established project, you didn't grow up inside it. So this wasn't your social environment growing up. This isn't what you were. Yeah, you were kind of programmed from mainstream society. Well, probably not mainstream with having a mum like you do, but fairly mainstream from the environment you would have been in. So I wonder, do you have an experience of this, or do you have another question? You sound like you had another question then.
Yes, I'm so curious, so wanting to learn from your experience. So I just note down another question, I want to explore further that I just hear from Mark. So you talk about sometimes the edge are knocks. I'm curious about what process do you have, or what kind of tools or practice do you have to hold the space where the edge are knocked?
Mm,
You know,
I
what
think
do we do when that happens?
there are
What do you
two
do?
there are two answers to that. First, from a personal perspective, obviously, when you throw your best self forward and
Mm,
all you get is the criticisms,
mm,
you have to tend to your own soft places, and I think
mm,
everybody has their personal practices for that. For me, I like to get out in nature and
mm,
remind myself about the bigger picture of the world, and
mm,
also decompress
mm,
privately, and then hopefully you can then come forward without you know, the hurt heart, and move things forward with positivity, and look for solutions. But I think the bigger picture is really about an approach that I have really observed with how you carry yourself in, and not holding on to your own view of what is right, and that there is just one way. And I think that, you know, I can think of this example that I had personally when I offered sort of, when I looked at what was available to put my efforts into, I was pretty passionate about growing food. I had lived on the other side of the country in Vermont, which is an incredible, innovative place around community and food. And so I thought that was something that I would love to support and see grow here. I'm not a green thumb myself, but I do have pretty good organizational skills. So, and because as Mum said earlier, we have just amazing knowledge in terms of soil scientists and horticulturalists, permaculturalists. And I thought, geez, if somebody can just pull these people together and into action, you know, we can do something amazing. And of course, you know, the reality is, with so many different points of view, you have, you know, there is no one right way. There's just, you know, trying to figure out a way forward. And so I thought that I could, you know, pull all of these people onto the same page, and it's just not, it's not an easy task to get people who haven't lived together, you know, to come together without a little friction. And so this is the example of where I got myself a little hurt trying to push forward a way. And what I realized is there you do have to slow down, and you do have to make sure that you have appropriate consultation. And I think, you know, I work in a semi-corporate world, and you think that progress is sort of coming up with outcomes. And the reality is that we do move a lot slower in making things happen in an eco-village. Now, I'm still of the mind that we should try and remove barriers to making things happen, because we want to support people's energy around, you know, creating cool things in the world. But I think that what I realized is that there is so much power in being open to other people's feedback. And you do, if you hold the vision, or hold on to the vision, but hold the how loosely, then you can create something amazing. And I just have been so in awe of how, you know, Mum talks about making sure that we're on track, you know, to head north, but how we get there, or whether we're slightly off north, is not a worry. It's really that we're moving together, moving forward, and honoring the relationships.
Yeah, can I ask a further questions? Desiree, do you have really more? I'm curious of how the elders as Narara Ecovillage able to pass on this way of seeing and this kind of practice. So I'm curious about, as a community, do you have a practice on education that help to kind of cultivate this way of embracing the challenge in the community to the next generation? Do you have a kind of a common practice that you use together?
It's not so, well, I guess the common practice, once again, I hate to keep going back to it, is sociocracy. And so if there is a group that has a proposal and they're really passionate about it, and they do their consultation and work through the processes to get the proposal up, and then, you know, get the consent from the community, then things will go ahead. It might not be quick, but then the lovely thing about life is that life happens. So, of course, what happened, you know, in 2020 with COVID hitting, you know, just made, we have a number of, in particular, South Africans, you know, here in the Ecovillage. And the South Africans offer us this lived experience of difficulty in their country. And so they, you know, they brought to the fore this notion of resilience, you know, who's someone like me, you know, who's had a pretty easy life really here in Australia, you know, sunny Australia. It hasn't been, hasn't been that difficult. So they were like, we have to do something about it. We need a diesel tank, because we have to sort of have some diesel. And we're like, diesel in an eco-village? Oh my God, doesn't the sun always shine? No, and then maybe we need some food, stashed, and, bought up the whole lot of rice and stuff. And so life happened then, and that sort of kicked us along a bit. And we had to work out, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. And there was a lot of fear and all that. So that was a wonderful event in that it pushed us, into a few directions that we might not have jumped into, so that's pretty great. That's pretty good, I think. I know I certainly don't hold too tightly where we're going. I mean, I see that we're going north. I'm not sure if we're going to Japan or Thailand, but as long as we're in that trajectory, between Thailand and Japan, I'm happy. If we suddenly go down to the Antarctic, or, to Hawaii or somewhere like that, then I might fight for the project. But I haven't felt that. So I think some eco-villages at the beginning talked about the beginning people, the pioneers actually kind of setting a note for how things might go forward. So we had the people we had at the beginning, they were who they were. And it was those people at the beginning that attracted the next wave, and then it became that group that attracted the next wave. And so I think that the pioneers do set a tone for the direction that it will go. I mean, that's not to say somebody could come in and take over and, make us head east or west or south or something, but there should be enough of us that say, no, we're going north. This bus is going north, So that's how it's happened at the moment, There may be another world event that is going to hit us that changes things completely. And maybe we have to go east or west. But I'm very confident that in this community of really solid people, intellectually, skill-wise, in so many ways, attitude-wise, that I'm glad they're on the bus with me. And we will get together, we'll put our heads together, and we'll work it out, as we go. You can't live life in your head, you have to live it one step at a time with a bit of a strategic direction, but nimble enough to sort of be able to jump at opportunities or jump at things that need avoiding.
Thank you. Thank you for the words of wisdom.
I think linked to that, so I'm wondering now for both of you, a question for both Gaia Ashram and for Narara. This culture, the way that you're living and operating is very different from the mainstream. So there is a different culture, and and maybe this is connecting to your question of how do people, like, I think I know where you're coming from. How do they know how to make decisions? How do they know what the culture is? So how do you pass on those values, those cultural values, or those differences to people that are not from an eco-village? So open up to whoever wants to speak to that.
Your turn, Om.
Yeah, I think we are working with the membership structures also. We try to be very aware and mindful of what message we send out and the invitation that we send out, that we will get at least some idea. People have like some ideas, a bit more of what are they coming for, and to help us to screen a little bit. And then we are trying to work with the membership structures where they have to experience living with us for at least a year, to in the different stage, which they can pull off anytime when they experience it and then don't feel it's right. And when they have that commitment, then we start to get them more involved in the decision making. And as we are a very small group, we are only now start to, it's been 10 years that where the pioneers, the founders that is holding this for so strongly. And only now we decided that it's ready to open up for people to join us as a community. So we are on the process of sharing the power and the decision making structures, which that was my question earlier, was that when people starting to join us and then they didn't have a lot of experience yet and not having a very clear vision yet where we are going or in touch with the spirit deeply. And as with only two of us, that is the co-founder, and then we have more members joining us, and then they have more voices to take things to a different direction. So in this process, we are at the point where we still have we have the space where we open for participation at the different level of people at the different stage of commitment throughout their 1 year of becoming members. They have a certain area where they can get involved in the decision making until they're fully committed as a resident, as member. Still as a resident, as member, at the moment, we are still very small group. So we're trying to make it very open and participation. So that means we have so many meetings as is everyone kind of get involved with everything. So we don't have so many circle yet, even though we have several circles, but it's like everyone is in every circle for the moment. And still in every circle, myself and my husband, who were the founder, still somewhat holding the direction to the north or to the east. So we still need to kind of have a strong presence at the same time. We're trying to see that it's like we're seeing ourselves. I see ourselves as like a big tree that is having a strong influence and create a lot of shade. And then now we start to planting many young trees underneath it, and then to tend it. And is it a time where we need to start pruning some branch of the big trees to have the light for the younger trees to grow? Or at one point we are on the process also start to move ourselves a little bit with more distance, so then the people inside they can be a bit less under our influence, at the same time still knowing that the influence as the spirit of the place, as the tone that you said, as the tone of the place, still we still need to maintain that influence for the moment until we have a bigger group who are really mature in terms of understanding the directions and also the core values. So I think that is where we are. That's why I'm so curious about your process. And it's really challenging in this moment where there's a lot of challenge and edges scratch.
Well, I'm not sure about what the direction to go here is, but when people come to visit us for the first time, they meet quite a few, like, for example, on an open day, or even if they come, through the website, they can see quite a lot of diversity. And so there's somebody here for everybody in the world, so I think that that's a strength by the time we've got a few numbers now. And so, we might meet somebody and then we'll say, John, will you come and meet these people, and maybe, with your finance hat on, could you talk about that? And also talk about the power systems, because they're very interested in that, and so we can ask Marg or some other younger people. This is a young family. They want to know what it's like to live here with a couple of young teenage, young boys. Or here we've got somebody here who's just had a baby, and or somebody here who's a older woman on their own. Would you like to? Somebody here who's a yoga teacher. Somebody here, and so on. They're horticulturalists, and so that's pretty useful, to be able to call them in when somebody comes. And that gets people with a greater sense of possibility. This is definitely a possibility for me here. So I think that helps. You're at the moment, you've got to be like we were at the beginning. We've got to try and be something for everybody, and now that's not the case. So I think that perhaps that helps.
I think the other comment, if I can just jump in, is that it sounds like I don't remember what you said in terms of numbers, but because we have so many people here now who have kind of joined with a common vision and experienced the culture that has sort of developed, not with any strong, what's the word, like philosophies that are dogma. We don't have strong dogma, I would say, here, but obviously there is a culture that has developed nonetheless. And because there are so many people here, the ship sort of carries on. And so it's not easy, because I can hear in your questioning like some concerns about whether somebody could join and change the direction if they jump right into the decision making without having a strong sense of the culture or the direction. And I think that is more difficult to do once you've got, a certain size. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think so. We're working through what we call a pathway to conflict. So just on that, and I'm glad you sort of brought that up, really, because what I think having sociocracy in place actually heads some conflict off at the pass. You know what I mean by that? I think that there's conflict that we could have been having that we're not having because of the structure of sociocracy, the respectful way we have to listen to each other because the system demands it, and certain other things like that. So I think there could be more conflict if we didn't have that. And so that's one thing. But then apart from that, since I've been involved, I'd say there have been probably 3 times that we have had difficult situations, and so we floundered. What are we going to do? And, all those sort of things, talking behind the scenes and all that sort of thing. And in probably, well, 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3, perhaps even, the people have left, and then we've just gone, oh, phew, we got away with that one. But this year we've actually tried to be a bit more proactive in the world. And so at the board's asking us a request, but also we were working on it anyway, sort of behind the scenes, but slowly, because nothing gets you going better than having somebody who's got narcissistic behavior or, or the difficult behavior, I probably should say. So we've actually been working on what we call a pathway to conflict. Well, even that we've got a debate about whether I think it should be conflict management, not conflict resolution, because whether we ever resolve it, I'm not sure. But a pathway to conflict management and grievances that they might have with the co-op and the organisation. And so that's been really, a big labour of love of mine, to work on that. And I've been talking to Diana Leaf Christian, if you're very aware of her. She's very strong in community development in the United States, and she's, written quite some good stuff, and certainly when I was visiting Marg, we both of us went down to meet her, and she's sort of been a good guide, for us as well. So we have a very interesting elder woman, not here in the community, but living up north, who's given us a few tips and that too. So that's going to be something that will be in place, not as a compulsory thing that people have to get if they get into a conflict that's out of hand for them or whatever, but as an offering. And I'm sort of backing Diana Leaf Christian, who says that if you often have this sort of thing there, sort of set up, you often don't need it, because there's a bit of an education in itself, just in its existence and sitting as part of the Narara Ecovillage. Like, it doesn't have to be something that is punitive, or it just can be sitting there. So that's to watch this space. We don't know yet, it's only been there for a while, but really we haven't, considering the number of people that have been through here and are still here, we've done incredibly well, from what I've seen in the world. And I don't know if I know the answer to that, why we don't seem to be as wounded a community as I've seen in the world. I'm not sure about that yet. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
So I wonder, it sounds like this is an unusual, or you've noticed that there's been other conflicts in other places, and obviously in the mainstream there's lots of conflicts with lots of personalities, as well as the structures that are set up that are not really collaborative. So I wonder if we can maybe touch on a little bit there's a difference from the person from the inside out, right? You have to have a level of self-awareness, and I think you have to also recognize you need to let go and align to something bigger than yourself, which maybe isn't a mainstream perspective. So maybe you can talk a bit about that. I find myself, I'm similar, like I'm not in control of, I'm very aware that I'm not in control of anything. I think having that position and being part of the bigger plan and letting the universe, be the universe, not me be the universe. I think that was a big shift for me when I kind of stepped out of that mainstream thinking. So I wonder if maybe you can share a little bit about the inner work that had to happen. And maybe it didn't have to happen. Maybe you were born like that, or maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
You want to say something?
I feel quite mixed about that because I think that with our community, we have a broad mixture of mainstream adjacent people. And so we're not a spiritual, centered community. We have lots of spiritual people here and spiritual practices that happen here, from women's circles to kirtan to yoga and singing, deep ecology. So we definitely have spiritual practices here, but it's not a core, essential part of being part of this community. And so I mean, I think sometimes that work happens to you in life. It doesn't have to be an active practice of it, but I'm not sure that I have an answer on this one, but perhaps you have more to say.
Well, I suppose the only other thing I'd add is that nothing personally, and I don't know why this is, and I think that it's common to other people here. We do get pleasure out of other people's pleasure as well. It doesn't make me happy that there's wars going on in the world, and that's at a distance. And it certainly wouldn't make me happy if there was a lot of misery here in the eco-village, but people are in service to each other. It gives me great pleasure to, if someone's sick, to come in. Sorry, if it gives us great pleasure to maybe make some chicken soup for somebody who's sick, or an apple crumble if I hear that they're sick. I just delivered a meal to a family last night, that are in trouble a little bit, so, or just, sort of tired at the moment. And that gives me such great pleasure, like it's service. And, took me a while to, to get that meal ready, but and I think there are a lot of people here like that, if they can do a little something, a little random act of kindness or whatever. You see that happening all the time, little bit random acts of kindness and that. So don't forget, in our house, it's all about the I, but out there in the community, it's about the we. And right here today, it's about the we, because this is our third generation who's just back from school.
Hello.
Zinni,
Hi.
world, no pressure. So Zinni's 13 and Marg's elder son.
Yep.
Hello, what's your name?
Zin.
Zed, nice to meet you. I'm
Yeah.
Natalie.
So
We were
he
just having a little chat about living in an eco village and seeing what the differences are from the outside world, and yeah, a little bit from your experience. So I don't know if you want to speak or not. No pressure.
Yeah, it's really good. You get to be around your friends every day, and yeah, it's really fun. It was interesting on the weekend. We were talking about we were skiing last week, and we had such a fun time down there. And it came up, oh well, what if we could live here all the time? And Zin, for the first time, because sometimes, as you know, teenagers can be a bit down on the things in their lives. But he said, oh, but I miss the eco village, so yeah, it's very nice. Yeah.
Zin's got some work that he does here, helps out at our cafe cart, and his brother does too. And they get rewarded by a hamburger or some cookies or something. And then eventually, Zin is keen to earn some money. So, he'll progress to possibly being our barrister, if that's how you say that word.
Barista.
Yeah, barrister.
Wow, are you studying law? Well, one day we'll be studying law. That's a
Or
big
coffee making.
ambition.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Amazing. And you said you had lots of the next generation. You have a lot of children or younger adults in your community. How do you make space for them?
Well, interesting enough, and Zinni will be able to tell us about this, but not long ago, probably a couple of months ago, two of the adults called a meeting. Were you there, Zinni? And they said to them, "You've got $3,000 in the account because the kids actually save bottles and recycle these bottles and tin cans, and they get money for it. And they've actually made $3,000. So they had a Socratic meeting, where they talked. Were you there, Zinni?
Yeah, we talked about what we could use that money for and had a little vote of what the kids wanted. And yeah, it was really good to have a community and be able to vote on that.
What were the options and
So-
what passed?
Some kids wanted we have a soccer pitch down on the floodplain, and some kids wanted to improve that and get better goals. We also have this room that we could have a little teenager area to hang out. Yeah, and we had a little vote on that.
Yeah.
And
So
how do you think the voting process was? Do you think it was a good, fair process? Do you feel like it was, okay? Were you happy with the decision?
Yeah, obviously there were some younger kids who wanted different stuff, but it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if final decisions were made that day. Is that right? I think it was more to explore what they could and what did kids want. And then, obviously there'd have to be some prioritization and then go to a Socratic consent process. It's not a vote. They don't do the 52-48. It'll be a consent process, and the older ones will have to consider the younger ones. Whether they decide to split the money half, or I'm not sure. That'll be sort of another part of whatever process they decide to do that. But it's empowering.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is really important in terms of raising kids in the world is helping them solve or create structures for them solving their own challenges, because coming back to the conflict discussion we said earlier, I feel like a lot of the times when we have conflict, what we're seeing is people needing to outsource the power to some higher authority to make a decision. And you see it in the playground at school, where kids come to a teacher and ask for them to be the judge on who was right and who was wrong. And so I'm quite passionate about having kids take responsibility for solving their conflict and creating the structure while they're young to understand that they can solve their problems. And hopefully that will be something that helps harmony in the world as more kids are empowered that way.
What way would you like to head now?
So this guy's got to go to sport, so I've got 5 more minutes. Do you want to go get changed and then
Thanks,
we
Zinni.
go? We kind
So
of
I wonder.
there, so yes.
So I wonder, Margaret, make the most of you before you head off to
Yeah.
soccer. From your point of view, so it wasn't given, it wasn't assumed that you were going to live. Well, you were obviously in another continent at the time as well. So why did you choose the Ecovillage?
Well, I think it's an easy question, and I'm very different to all of the other young families here, because I didn't have to go through any decision-making process around trust or whether this was a right call, because obviously, for me, family has always been so important, and having 10 years on the other side of the world, sharpened that a lot. And so even today, when I see my dad drive past with his bike on his back off to some adventure, or get to drive my niece home from school, I am acutely aware of the privilege of, being around my family in my day-to-day life. So I'm not really a good example of why a young family would choose to join, but I think, I do think that there are challenges with being part of a community like this and being a young family, because there's a lot more relationships to manage, you know, or manage is an unkind way to say it, but to tend to. And, you know, we've fallen in love with so many community members, and as Mum mentioned earlier, people get sick and you really want to help them, and fireweed needs pulling and you really want to pull it, and you've got to let the chooks out, and you've also got to go to work. And so there are challenges, I think, but I think the real privilege is seeing your kids grow up in this environment. And you know, I just am so grateful to all of the people in our community, not just the families, but the elders who take the time to really connect with our kids, and to see that beautiful connections being made between older generations and my kids, and the sharing of knowledge and the patience for making those connections. It's really something that doesn't feel like it's replicable in mainstream society. And then also, you know, I grew up on a farm, and the free range nature of the kids here, and knowing that they'll always have someone with half an eye on them. But to be able to give that childhood in this modern era in Australia is it's a huge privilege too. So I think the community and just that freedom that they have is just such a gift. And then of course having their grandparents close by is, you know, is next level.
Thank you. Yeah, it does sound like an idyllic scenario to grow up in, or to be part of as well, and to raise a family in. Because I think I look at my friends who, you know, and you're working as well as mothering, and doing that away from your family is, yeah, it's a lot more strain, right? You have a big support network where you are now.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And then just, you know, rubbing shoulders with some of these inspirational people who live here, you know, our kids, we don't have to work so hard to expose them towards big, important ideas, like growing your own food, like, you know, the way that the way that you can live better in relation to the land. And it's such a gift. It flows through to you, and it can just be part of the fabric of living, not just you know, work that we have to do as parents to bring them up right. It's a really gift. It's a real gift.
Thank you. And if you need to, yeah, pop out anytime, feel free.
Okay, I might duck off now. Thanks, and thanks everybody. It's so lovely to chat with you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Hope he wins. Last year. We never
Yeah,
care
good luck,
what they
Dan.
win.
Do you have a reflection to share about this topic?
I just feel very touched by these stories of the 3 generations and what Mark just shared about herself. I have daughters and son. They are 10 years old son and 7 years old daughter. They've been playing around and taking Gaya Ashram as their more like their playgrounds, and they play with friends sometimes. And at the same time, their interest is also a lot outside. They're curious about the outside world. They want to see cities, and they want to what I hear from March is also like, yeah, we're giving them this childhood experience where they can remember their richness of this lifestyle. And who knows, maybe one day they'll come back and after they experience it all, and then they see it all, and then also seeing the 3 generations, knowing that as our dreams, my dreams, also hoping to see Gaya Ashram as an old eco-village in the future for 100, 200 years, and then seeing your sharing your wisdom about it's not only what where we're trying to go, but it's also about trying to be here as well, to in each moment, and embracing what happens is actually what makes you still stand there and being here, and then being able to pass on and being able to see the 3 generations there.
Yes.
So yeah,
I mean, I just like to add something there. When one of the ideas around this for me was that I had a very needy mother. You know, that might sound funny to perhaps you in Thailand or Vietnam, you know, who have much tighter family structure. But, you know, I just thought, I'm never going to be like that. You know, I'm going to be independent. I'm going to live in this eco village with other people and we'll look after each other. I'm not going to expect my children, you know, to look after me in my old age. And never for a minute did I think that any of them, because they had no interest at all, you know, they were heading off into the world. My son was living in London, you know, Margot was living in the United States. I thought they were gone forever. And then it was quite a surprise to me that they actually came back, you know, but I still am very careful not to be needy with them. You know, I cook them a meal most weeks, but I just drop it on their doorstep. You know, I don't eat with them. You know, I want to give them space and that, you know. So, and then also I try and help other families, you know, if I see them. When somebody has a baby here, we organize what we call a meal train. And so for 2 weeks after they've had a baby, we have you know, people volunteer to cook them a nice dinner and drop that in, you know, just so that they've got a couple of weeks. Sometimes it's even longer. So that's kind of a nice thing. But could I make a suggestion? Would that be okay, Na and Om?
Yes, yes, of course.
We have 3 Narara I think only 3. There's Annie and Tanya and John here. I wonder, could you ask a question that maybe each of those just could answer to give you a little bit of variety in what you're hearing? Annie, are you still here?
Yeah.
And if you're wanting to talk, that is as well. Is that, yeah, so if there's anything you want to say in response to anything we've covered, then please go right ahead.
Oh, John, you're off mute.
Yeah, perhaps then I'll go first. Yeah, nothing sort of, you know, was sort of top of my mind. But I suppose the thing we haven't touched on, I suppose, is the technology and the organizational structure of the village. And that's something, as Lyndall mentioned, that I've been quite involved in. And I think that's another element that is of, you know, interest to a lot of people in the village. Is we have our own power company. Every house produces more renewable energy than it uses. And we have a community battery. And so essentially we're sort of semi-independent from the overall power network in the country, although we are still connected to the country. And at the same time, on the water utility side, although we do make use of the sort of water utility in the Sydney region, we manage that ourselves within our own community. So we have our own pipe network. We supply 2 types of water to our owners, so they get a potable water connection for their houses, and then a separate lower quality water connection which is used for flushing toilets and for garden use. So all of those things are other elements, if you like, of achieving that sort of living lightly on the land type philosophy. And I think it also provides a real sense of interest, you know, for people in the village. The one thing that surprised, well, I suppose I hoped it would happen, but I'm really impressed as to how much we do, is how many events there are in any one month. We'll have probably upwards of 5 or 6 events happening with people visiting the village and different groups touring around and things happening. And it's really a good sort of a boost, if you like, to your own sense of engagement, that you've got all that information and stuff happening in the village. It makes for quite an exciting life. Yeah. So happy to take any questions if people have, but yeah, I think that's probably what I would contribute.
And I wonder, John, I think it's amazing having a power company within the Eco Village, and I wonder, for people like yourself, did you join at the beginning or did you come a little later?
No, I came sort of, I suppose I'd call myself halfway through, if you like. I bought one of the last lots in stage one. So we came in 2017,
Okay.
bought a lot in 2018, and then we started building in 2021, and we're now living in the village. Yeah.
And in that case, may I ask you when you joined, not necessarily why you joined, but how did it join in the systems and the processes and the decision making in the power company? How was that for you, and how different was it from what you'd experienced outside of this community?
So I suppose the longer answer to that, if you like, is that both my partner and myself had retired, and we'd spent a few years working political campaigning for the Greens Party. And we hadn't found that, particularly I hadn't, I suppose, but we hadn't found that as rewarding as we'd hoped it might be. And we were looking for a sort of a new challenge. And they have an expression in Australia, it's called tree changing or sea changing. I guess it's fairly known worldwide, but essentially it's a process of saying, move out of a big city and find somewhere else to go, if you like, that's got the things you didn't have when you were in the big city. Um, but the advantage, you know, as Lyndall had pointed out, is that Narara is on the edge of the big global, you know, conurbation of Sydney. It's on the railway line. You can still go to, you know, concerts and opera and things in Sydney if that's what you do. But you can live in sort of a semi-rural community like this. So that balance of the two appealed to us. And I think we both just enjoyed the idea of a new challenge. You know, we were both, I suppose, in our mid-60s by then, and we were looking at what we were going to do with the next sort of 10 or 15 years of our life. When we joined, I don't have any experience in power or water. I've got a certain sort of sense of it from being a climate activist, if you like, and looking for the ways we can live lightly on the planet. But my background was working with systems and people in a corporate world, managing customer relationships. So I took on what we grandly called retail management for Nev Water and Nev Power. But since then, I've become more and more involved, particularly in the power side of things. And it's a very interesting field. You know, we're now going through the stage of getting people buying electric vehicles. We've now, I think, got 10 or 12 in the village. So maybe as much as 25% of the people living here have now got an electric vehicle, which is, you know, understandable, but above average for Australia. But the other thing, and I'll shut up at that point, but, you know, we're now starting to see the possibility you can use an electric vehicle as a home battery. And that's got those people who are really into those kind of things really excited and keen to see that begin to happen. And I think that will probably be a massive change for us in the next 3 or 4 years. You know, because it's obviously a way of having an electric car, but also having a home battery at the same time. So yeah,
Very
anyway, that's
smart.
enough. Yeah, yeah.
And Tanya, can I ask you, yeah, similar question. So what's your experience since joining? When did you join as well?
I joined in 2019 and I came to the village and it was hot and sticky and I'd just come back from Europe and it was, oh, no, I can't cope with this. But the people were so damn nice. And I attended a sociocracy workshop and I went, that's interesting. And then I lent in and there was a fantastic training on the training of trainers about the map of regeneration with Kosha Juba, who was the then CEO of Gen International. And I loved it. The process was whole systems design using social, ecological, economic, and cultural. And I went, I love this. I love this. I want to do this. And so, yeah, I dived in and went, I really like this. And then, of course, we had COVID. But I didn't join immediately in 2019. It was later. But it was the resources and the tools that I went, these are solutions to the problems that we have. And then as we went into COVID and Jen was doing online workshops and we at Narara were doing online open days. You remember those, Lyndall? And getting innovative. And then, of course, the IPCC had the 6th mitigation report, and boom, Findhorn was on the front with solar panels, veggie gardens, composting. And I went, yes, and Narara's like that too. And then I got to represent Narara in the Ecovillage resilience program, and which was 20 ecovillages globally. And it was a fantastic insight. And we got from that, well, prior to that, we'd done the impact assessment, and that gave us some indication of areas of strengths and weaknesses, because it's a framework developed and globally recognized, applicable to small intentional communities, fishing villages, and up to, community of our size, or Ithaca or Findhorn. And so that was insight. And then, last year it was very exciting. We were asked to participate in a sustainability award. And, that's on top of all of the other awards and recognitions that Lyndall had from going out speaking to radio, television, all sorts of things. And then this year we're again participating in the Keystone Communities international project, which is again raising awareness on tools, etc., of being prepared. And so that, leads us into more and more discussion. And what I'm finding with these tools and resources in the last 2 weeks and the films that are popping up and we're showing, that we come together and then we have a Q&A and a discussion. And I think that brings connection, collaboration, cohesion, inspiration, and strength-based desire to do better. Was that a fair comment, Lyndall and John?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Annie might not be here anymore.
No, I think she's left the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, it sounds like, as well as within the community of Narara, you've got this system, you've got these processes and these new ideas, and you're trying them out. We spoke before, I think, with other eco villages and with Lyndall about the eco village is like a living experiment, and you're able to come together and try out different ways of living. And now that you're kind of maybe, a few years on from where and Gaia Ashram is, Om's kind of in that transition phase, bringing new people in. You've kind of done that, and now you're able to, it's like you've created this thing and now you're expanding out again into the world to share it and kind of show ways that other eco villages, or you're forging a path other eco villages can maybe follow, which I think is amazing. Do you want to speak a little bit about kind of where you see, if you see, or what you'd like to see with Gaia Ashram in other places in the world as well, because I know you speak to a lot of different eco villages all over the region.
Yeah, I think today one of the strong insights for me is about the scales, because we are at the moment is in terms of people who get fully involved, it's still quite small, like maybe 10 people. And I am just inspired by the 3 generations connections. And then I see that in our culture, in the local culture that we are part of, we do have that culture. So then I start to become more, I start to realize more the importance of us working with the local communities as far as the bigger, movement of the eco-village movement. So while we are trying to get bigger in our scale of this intentional group of people living together, there's also these existing communities around us that we could work with. And then there's like, how can we bring in these methods of having the kids learning how to talk to each other, how to make decisions, how to solve the conflict in the local schools. That could also be, that is my takeaway from today also, like, yeah, it's and we are working with the local communities, And then this one of the aspects that we can bring in to start seeing like the bigger community that is surrounded us. So I think that's what I take away from today with the conversation today. Thank you.
And Lyndall, I wonder if there's anything, what are you looking forward to, or what are you focusing on now in the position that you're in? And I know we spoke when we chatted before this call about you not being on the board anymore and freeing up some of your space to be more of a member. And I really feel like you've got that mindset that you're not, the founder was like over here, and now you're part of this community as an equal member, which I think is really amazing. So what are you looking forward to?
Well, I think I very much have a whole picture of life. I very much like my favorite activity of the week is Tuesday afternoons from 4 till 6 when I'm with my granddaughter and she gives me art lessons, and I have to call her Mrs. Paris and, all this sort of stuff. And so, my life isn't wholly this eco village. I'm very much a grandmother and wanting to wallow in that quite a bit. And I have another child another adult child in Melbourne, which is a city down the south of Australia. And so I sort of, try to go down there and they come up every school holidays and I want to sort of expand that way too. So I think that's really important to me. But don't forget, now we're not, there yet. We have kind of almost another 50% of people to integrate. And, this whole thing is a social experiment. And, I kind of, have a vague idea where we're going. And, but I don't hold that too tightly because what I've felt in the past is that it'd be crazy to hold things of my vision too tightly because it would be very narrow and I would be giving up some wonderful things because it's through other people that I've found that my life can be even bigger and better than what I can possibly imagine in my life, so I'm kind of a little bit more in the flow, I think, of like, for example, when I finish this, I'm going over to another member's house and he's giving me guitar lessons at the moment. I'm so hopeless, but it really is quite fun because he's at a similar age to me. So his music, he likes all the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all those, bands that I grew up with from England and from the United States. So that's great. I probably wouldn't be doing that if I lived I might or I might not, but it was just an opportunity that fell into my lap, and so I'm sort of seizing that. But it is an experiment. What will we be like? We've got a sense of what it's like to be a population of about 110. What's it like going to be a population of 250? We're talking about doing perhaps some affordable housing, some social and affordable housing in some way, because it's not a super affordable project, by any means, in saying that we are like a suburb of Sydney. And so all our development costs were commensurate with that. And so what will that be like? What will that bring to the eco village? Will it bring an us and them? These are things that are in the back of my mind. Will it rock the boat? Will the future rock the boat? What does the future hold? I mean, we seem to be in a vaguely politically stable, area of the world, but who knows? I don't know. Certainly what we're viewing, from the rest of the world is not making us feel secure in any way in that. So I don't know, I don't think we can sit back. Certainly, as Tanya mentioned, resilience is a big thing. Tanya and another guy led a resilience workshop last week. And I often say to my husband, because we're subject to wildfires, and, should we have a bunker here, in case, people get stuck with fires, all those sort of things on the small scale. And I'm kind of like, I'm not really a big thinker. I think, I figure that I'm just an ant on the anthill. I'm the same size as every other ant, and I can't really carry any more than any other ant. And, I remember having a period of time when I was a jury member, in Australia, and I came away thinking that was not just, but I just sort of thought, no, you can't carry that as well. Just put your head down. You're just a little ant, just focus on this little project. And I feel a little bit like that, that I could become quite scattered. And I don't think there's much sense in me becoming quite scattered. I think it's just, I have to just, I guess it's boundaries or something, and keeping my energy. I want to be well, and I want to be healthy, and I want to be rested, and I want to be a good grandmother, and enjoy my children and all those sort of things too. So it's how to balance all that in the world. With this project. And isn't that the case for all our lives? We're all trying to work out how to stay in balance, and how to, maybe have a life of a bit of contribution, and then a bit of fun and good health, and all those things. And how do we keep all those balls up in the air? You can all tell me, and I'll follow some things that you tell me, I'm sure.
So everyone here has the right answer, obviously. Yes. And I think balance is really key. I've heard that with lots of people, like balancing having a job outside of the eco village and inside, balancing your responsibilities as the part of the eco village, but also maintaining your own life, and like your intentionality around making sure you've got space for yourself as a person, not just as an eco village member. And yeah, I think that's really hard. I think it's everyone's, like you said, it's everyone's goal in life to balance. We have one question in the chat, which I'm going to put out. We have answered it a little bit, Morgan, but we'll ask it anyway because I think it does bear saying. They are asking, how do you process conflict? I know you're going to say sociocracy, but how would you hold open meetings, and it's asking about quite heavy topics like infidelity or moral conflicts, and how can you hold that, or how have you held that in your community?
Well, I mean, don't forget there's the law of the land. I mean, there are things that are, you can't make a certain noise, after 10 p.m. or you can't, so there are guidelines on that. So I mean, that's, you can't steal from somebody else. You can't, so that of course is always present, and you're right. I will say sociocracy, that heads some things off at the pass, because we have these rounds where we let everybody say something that wants to say something on a particular topic too. There are different courses that are presented if they are a way to influence people. I'm not sure whether courses are or are not, in that we might be presenting a course on NVC, nonviolent communication, or we might be presenting some other sociocratic course, or restorative justice. We run these different courses. Maybe they have an influence too. I think we model behavior. I remember talking to Liz Walker, who is one of the founders of Ithaca in upstate New York, which was a very influential eco-village for me. And because Marg was living there, I went to Ithaca every year for so many years. And I said to her, what do you do with, difficult people? And she told me, well, we have this guy who used to walk back and forward at the back of a meeting, ranting and raving, and I said, oh my God, that's terrible. No, we haven't had that, and I said to her, well, what did you do about it? And she just shrugged her shoulders. Well, there's nothing really you can do. He's, part of the Eco Village family. I said, how long did it go on for? And she said, oh, he's much better now. How long did it go on for? And she said, 32 years. So, so we are a family here, and we have lots of different personalities and different styles and that. But, and once again, this morning, we were talking about just that notion of accepting the differences and actually rejoicing about those differences. We're talking about a difficult person maybe that blocks something, you know, a decision that we're making. Everybody else wants it, but somebody, and so of course that's reflection. And definitely what I've found is, you know, inside I've been thinking, oh, this is such a nuisance, let's just get on with it, you know, and go ahead with this. And then it might be a few days later that the penny drops with me and I go, oh, I see, you know, it just takes, different people process things quite quickly or whatever. So, but sociocracy enables that person to have a different opinion. And we've got to be stronger. Our facilitator today reminded us that we have to be stronger in accepting that and welcoming it, and not making that person feel like they're, you know, out of line or whatever. So, I mean, I've probably ducked that question. I'm not sure about infidelity. You know, that's not something that would be on our radar.
No, I
You
think
know,
you've answered it. I think there's different levels. So there's like societal morals, there's morals between personal relationships between the two people in the relationship, and then there's ground rules and there's common agreements in the eco-village, as well as obviously actual law in the country. And there's
yes.
also going to be there's going to be different levels of managing that. But I think sociocracy, we will share in the follow-up to this. We've already put some links in the chat as well to sociocracy and some other of the references you've all mentioned, so people can seek out those resources. And we haven't got time to go into sociocracy because it's a big thing and hard to explain in 90 minutes. But yeah, have a check out the resources. And there's also workshops and stuff online as well that you can see. And I'm just conscious of the time. We've got a couple minutes. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, you know, we are Gaia Ashram is for very small groups like this. When there's conflicts, I think thing gets intense quite quickly because it's just circulating within the small bowls, and everyone kind of connected to everyone else so tightly. So I think it's quite challenging also to deal with conflicts responsive enough in the right timing so then it doesn't get more intensities where I think get more complicated. I think we're trying to understand what kind of conflict we are experiencing. So as for our experience here, is like a lot of conflict coming from miscommunication, misunderstanding, and also misperceptions on how we perceive things in a different way or a different understanding. So we try to, now we are learning about it, and then what we're trying to do now is trying to create a very clear structure and system in the communication, make sure people have a common understanding and perception on things. And then what usually happens is that when there are misunderstanding or when the conflict, then it's within this small group. So the direct communication with each other would be part of that as well. And eventually the decision-making process that we have as a resident, we will also discuss about it. And there's some complication in that as personal connections can get involved in how we navigate the issue, as well as people having more personal connections with others and more empathy towards people. And since we are so small group and everyone's voice is so loud in the small group, so sometimes it is not so easy when things get too intense. So I think now we are looking into trying to create a structure and system that able to navigate or embrace the signs of conflicts, or like what you share, what we could do to prevent things get into that intensities of conflicts. So for us at the moment, what we realize is that the clear communication, clear structures and systems, and then have a common understanding and make sure that this is a quite important part of common understanding, and that we perceive reality in a similar way, if it's not exactly the same way.
I think all I can say to you is look into sociocracy for your group.
Thank you. Yeah. For sure, I will after this.
I think everyone's going to be looking into
Yeah,
sociocracy after this.
There may be something better in the world,
Yeah.
but in all the time since something like 2006, nobody's come up with it here yet. Nobody's saying throw out sociocracy, Narara, use this one instead. So a few different things have come up, but nothing significant that we've thought about throwing it over. So that would be my advice. You'll stumble too and make mistakes like we still do after all this time, but your needle will be pointed on good things like transparency and inclusiveness and equivalence and all. And what more can you do but aim for something? There's this beautiful saying, some people aim at nothing and hit it with remarkable accuracy. So at least if we've got it there, that we're trying to be transparent and equal and equivalent, and all that, then hopefully we might hit it if we're lucky.
Thank you. I love that expression. We're at time, so thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Thank you, Linda. Thank you, John and Tanya and Mark. And everyone will send a follow-up with a recording and some resources. And we'll see you next time and let you know when our next Ecovillage talk is. Everyone, you can show your videos and say goodbye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Hi, Nararians.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.